Well, as Bitcoin this week narrowly missed the $8,000 mark for just one unit of the cryptocurrency, concerns are rising over whether the energy costs associated with Bitcoin mining could prove to be its undoing. Citigroup analyst Christopher Chapman told Bloomberg that the price required for mining to be profitable could reach as much as $300,000 to $1.5 million by 2022, based on current growth and electricity use. Well, I'm Hanna Ziady, and joining me in studio now to take a closer look at these and other risks concerning Bitcoin are Lorien Gamaroff, who is founder and CEO of BANKYMOON, and Just One Lap's Simon Brown. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining me. Lorien, let's start with you. Before we explore some of the concerns around energy usage and just how much electricity is needed to power Bitcoin, briefly explain to us, how does Bitcoin mining actually work?
Well, so mining is the word that we give to the transaction processing. If you think about a bank, every time you make a transaction, what you're doing is you're sending an instruction to the bank, and the bank is taking that and processing the transaction and moving money around. Now, that's what we call mining in Bitcoin. Okay, so these miners, as I understand, are lending their computing power to the network. So as you say, effectively making the network function, and for doing that they are rewarded, and they're rewarded through Bitcoin. So this is known as, I believe, a proof of work model, and there's some worry, some controversy over the fact that they're no longer being rewarded with as many Bitcoin as they were at the start, partly because the growth has been so phenomenal. There's a lot of competition across Bitcoin mining. So where do you think this kind of all ends up? Well, it's been carefully thought out. I think the whole idea of there not being enough Bitcoins coming to the system, that's just one aspect of how miners make their money. If you think about a bank, the bank earns its money from charging fees for processing your transactions. So what will happen is, yes, eventually we'll reach the limit of supply of new Bitcoins coming into the market, and that's an economic thing. You know, we want to have a fixed supply of Bitcoins, so it acts as a form of sound money, a finite supply, and then the miners will be incentivized by earning fees on those transactions.
Bitcoin mining, heavily energy intensive, which is why lots of it takes place in China. There's talk of electricity consumption to keep the Bitcoin network going being on a par with that of a small country. Simon, is that really sustainable or even desirable?
So the sustainable part, ultimately, I mean, there's certainly there are issues and there are challenges, but like, you know, there've been other issues and challenges in other systems. I mean, you know, the one I was talking before we went on, do it in Iceland, where you've got nice simple cooling. Use solar. Now there's obviously an upfront cost in that process, but you know, instead of doing it in China, go do it in the deserts of the Sahara and use that sort of power there. But it does, at some point, it's putting hurdles in the process. But right now, the sense is they can afford it. The question we have to say to ourselves, and then, you know, it becomes an environmental issue as well, where a lot of it is coal-fired and the like. But then it raises the, you know, what about other industries that use a large amount? I mean, you know, producing cement is a hugely intensive electrical use. We have no problem with that. Now we argue, oh, cement is useful, we make bridges and houses and the like. Fair point, but the studio is using a lot of power, and hopefully no one's looking at us and telling us to shut down. So it's almost a point, it's almost like a straw man argument, in the sense of saying, well, is Bitcoin's evil, and my word's not theirs. But you know, to that point where we're going to, oh, they're evil, there's a lot of stuff happening, and I'm not sure why Bitcoin in this case has been singled out for it.
So Lorien, you know, this is to your point earlier, that the current banking system, and off the back of Simon's point too, the current banking system uses a large amount of electricity. Do you think that the energy consumption required to power the Bitcoin network rather, could be its undoing, or do you think that's, not true?
No, it's not true. You know, the whole point about processing these transactions taking so much energy, there's a very important reason for that. First of all, if we just think about how the banking system works today, if you were to imagine all the resources and energy and everything that went into processing this big financial system that we have around the world today, you know, that's still much greater than the entire Bitcoin network. But also, you know, the reason that there's so much power that's required, it's a disincentive for bad actors to try and manipulate the system. If they want to try and corrupt it or coerce it or something like that, they're going to have to commit huge energy resources to that. So it has the double role. One is where it's actually replacing the system as we know it. Second of all, disincentivizing bad actors.
So certainly that speaks to this decentralized nature of Bitcoin and the fact that it's controlled by a community. There's miners, there are users, and pundits will say that that's what makes Bitcoin so secure, is that there's no central bank standing behind it. There's no single authority with complete control over Bitcoin. That's sort of heralded as part of what makes the currency so powerful. Now, as we know, democracies are inherently unstable and often inefficient. Simon, Bitcoin's communal aspect, a pro or a con for you?
Look, at the big picture, I think it's definitely a pro. I think, and one of the big attractions, you talk about no central bank standing behind it or something, the decentralized nature of it, the almost in a sense a democracy in a process, certainly is a big plus. I think both as a product, but also I think that that's what attracts a lot of people to it, and the desirability for it. But as you said, any process, the dictatorship of benevolent dictators, your best process, as long as they're nice, because democracy is a messy thing, and we're going to get that. And we had the one fork just averted. We had the fork to cash earlier back in August and the like, and there's going to be these sort of things are going to happen. I don't think they're necessarily bad. I think that vibrant debate and differences of opinion and the like, and as long as we say, look, at the end of the day, the community is going to broadly move in the right direction. They're not going to make the right step every time. That's not going to happen. But that it broadly moves in the right direction, I think is better than sort of anointing a bunch of people and letting them sort of like dictate to it, which is what happens in the current monetary system.
The price of Bitcoin hovering around the 100,000 Rand mark at the moment. To ask a circular question, is the value of Bitcoin rising simply because the value of Bitcoin is rising?
Yeah, and because Bitcoin is rising, people are buying it. Why are they buying it? Because it's rising. And ergo, no one is selling. Why are they not selling? Well, because if you sold today at $8,000 or 100,000 Rand, on Monday it's $9,000 and 120,000 Rand, and you feel like a fool. So it is. It's classic. Go look what happened to Amazon in 99, 2000. It's exactly that. And I must stress that the price and Bitcoin are two separate things, and blockchain is yet a third. It's rising simply because it is, and therefore people buy it. And the phone calls and emails I get is, Bitcoin's up, should I be buying some? Not what is Bitcoin, or is it, it's going up, they want. We see it on the stock market all the time. If it's rising, suddenly it's flavor of the month.
Absolutely. So perhaps if you are wanting to invest in Bitcoin, you must be prepared to lose it all. We are going to leave it there for now. Thanks to Simon Brown of Just One Lap. After the break, we will be joined by LEISHEN PILLAY, partner at law firm HOGAN LOVELLS, to take a look at blockchain, which is the technology behind Bitcoin. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Well, we are talking Bitcoin and now blockchain, the technology behind the cryptocurrency. Lorien Gamaroff, CEO of BANKYMOON, still with us. And we're also joined now by LEISHEN PILLAY, partner and head of technology, media and telecoms at HOGAN LOVELLS. LEISHEN, thanks for joining us. Blockchain, the technology underpinning Bitcoin, as I said. If you had to explain blockchain to your grandmother, how would you describe it?
So, it's quite a complex concept, but to explain it easily, it's a ledger. You imagine a book of entry and you're storing transactions on that. But instead of storing it from the top going down, imagine for a moment your first transaction's at the bottom. And imagine that transaction is stored on Lego blocks. Okay? You store the first transaction, and then your second transaction is the next line item, which is a Lego block on top of that. And so it goes on. Just to indicate how secure it is, now if you want to go back to the first line item and remove one of those blocks, it's difficult because you've got another layer of blocks on top of that. So that's called your blockchain. So that's where your transactions are stored. Each one represents a block. It's a transaction. And it's a chain because they're interlocked together. So the technology works where consecutive blocks make the technology stronger. The encryption gets stronger to the extent that the more transactions you have, the stronger it becomes.
Right, so it's a chain of blocks. Each block is a transaction.
Correct.
Self-explanatory.
Yes.
Why? So getting into...
a block is a group of transactions.
Yes.
A block is a group of transactions.
Yes. And they're linked together in a chain, so we call it a blockchain.
Okay, okay. So it is sort of quite self-explanatory. You were getting into some of the, you mentioned the word encryption.
Yes.
Why is there so much excitement around blockchain technology and the potential for blockchain?
All right. So The excitement comes from the fact that it's decentralized, number one, so you don't need a concentrated or centralized equipment to run your blockchain. That's the first thing. The second thing is it's very, very secure. And the reason for that is the way in which the technology links together and the way in which it encrypts itself. So it's self-encrypting, and the encryption gets more difficult and it gets higher in strength or stronger as more transactions on the blockchain. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that it's easily accessible, okay? And the way in which we can access it is via an app, on a PC, whatever the case may be. But those are some of the characteristics that make the technology so great. And bringing it all together, it's secure, it can facilitate financial transactions, easily accessible on a mobile device, and you put all of that together, and you've got something that's really unstoppable.
Okay, so we're going to get to some of the use cases for blockchain. I'm going to bring you in here, Lorien, because we had a conversation some time back where you described blockchain, and I quote, the internet of the next generation, and I'm sorry that I keep bringing that up, with the potential to disintermediate banks, clearing houses, so much more. Are you still so bullish on blockchain?
Well, you know, the whole idea around blockchain originally was the cryptocurrency aspect, you know, where we now have this ability to have a decentralized currency that it acts like a digital form of gold. And that was where blockchain came from. And then people started thinking, hang on, this whole decentralized idea, maybe we can start doing other things with it. Maybe we could issue securities on this blockchain. Maybe we could somehow secure identities on this blockchain. So, you know, when we think about it being the new internet, I don't think it's like saying that we now have a new platform where we can have all this information and all that sort of thing. But it certainly does, first of all, I do think it disrupts the finance system. I think central bank issued currencies, you know, might have a run here. If more and more people start using these permissionless cryptocurrencies, it could mean that, you know, we start using fiat currencies less and less. So it's certainly going to have as big an impact as the internet had. Now, as to whether it's going to be able to do all these other things, you know, disrupt just about everything. We keep hearing all these quotes as well, and other than that, you know, saying how it's going to disrupt everything. We don't know. I mean, you know, when it comes to a new technology, when we first look at it, we can't imagine where it's going to go. But human beings have this very interesting way of creating, you know, amazing things out of something very small and basic. And what we have here is a very small and basic idea. We have a decentralizing technology, something that can now run systems or process information transactions or whatever in a decentralizing kind of way. And that certainly does seem that it could have a massive impact on the world.
Indeed, because you don't need you know, an independent third-party intermediary such as a bank, a clearinghouse, to validate certain transactions which we rely on for today. And there are countries out there that are looking to place land registries on a blockchain. Kenya is working with IBM, also looking at placing public records on a blockchain. I think Estonia and Sweden have looked at or have already placed their land registry on a blockchain. LEISHEN, for you, how would you hope to see this technology used in Africa?
I want to see it used everywhere. I want to see it first revolutionize the financial industry, which is where it came about, which is where we started seeing it. So finance is going to be something that is, I think that you know, blockchain is going to assert itself there first and foremost. And how it'll look, whether it's Bitcoin or another currency, or maybe it will be Bitcoin, I don't think it really matters. I think that it's going to bank the unbanked community, or give access, when I say bank loosely, but allow unbanked communities to access finance and access a platform to transact. There's lots of uses for the technology. The other one is storage. So there's decentralized storage. So you can buy a storage on the blockchain. So that's going to be another huge one. There's lots of opportunities also for the Internet of Things. So the Internet of Things are a number of you know, items that are connected to the internet, all talking to one another and all talking to your device and talking to human beings, communicating with human beings. And obviously that interaction needs to be secure. So it's possible that the future of the Internet of Things will be through the blockchain, and they'll then be able to communicate securely. InsurTech, I mean, insurance, buying insurance on the go, Inventory, for example, I've seen some of the manufacturers out there putting their products on a blockchain ledger, and then when you take delivery, the consumer takes delivery, or the retailer or the wholesaler takes delivery of that, they do a check on the blockchain to see whether it is actually manufactured goods or counterfeit goods or original goods. So that's another example. Also vaccines, to maintain the cold chain through the Internet of Things. It's stored on the blockchain. If a vaccine goes below a certain temperature, it can't be used anymore. Being connected to the internet and being immutable, in other words, that record can't be changed, the temperature cannot be manipulated. That allows us to get more efficiency in our vaccines. So huge amount of applications, and the future looks bright.
So the potential is there. I suppose as when the internet came out, we couldn't predict social media, we couldn't predict even email or e-commerce for that matter. We are running out of time, but briefly, Lorien, do you think that some of these use cases are going to stick and we will see blockchain revolutionize our lives the way that the internet did and has and continues to do?
Yes, well, what we are certainly seeing now that many companies, many banks, all sorts of companies have been now actively pursuing these ideas, these use cases. The problem is teasing out a business case. Very often what we find is that there are existing technologies that actually do the job far better. And so it almost seems that the use case, and at least the business case for blockchains, are becoming quite narrow. And in my mind, there's maybe one or two real use cases that are likely, but the vast majority of them right now just don't seem that they'll go anywhere, and that's just because of what we've been seeing now come out of these POCs with all these banks and other companies.
And we will leave it there. That is unfortunately all we have time for, but certainly very exciting and something to watch. Thanks very much again to our guests, LEISHEN PILLAY from HOGAN, LOVELLS, and Lorien Gamaroff, the CEO of BANKYMOON. Many thanks to you for watching, and goodbye.